Welcome back to another episode of the Randy Wilson Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilson. This is episode 65, and we have a phenomenal guest with us today. 65 seems like a special number, so I now tend to think this
Very
is
special.
be a special episode. We have phenomenal guests on the show. Before I get into that intro, though, for those of you who are listening, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications button, because after this conversation, you're going to want to share this with your network. I believe this conversation is going to also impact your net worth, not only in regard to opportunity, but I think it's just going to bring significant value and substance just from the conversation. This brother here, Michael Muhammad, is an activist in the Norfolk community. I would say that more than just the Norfolk community, though. I think the work that he does transpires across the state of Virginia and ultimately into the world with the energy that he gives off. He's going to share a little bit with you about, his accomplishments and some of his things, but I will tell you just a couple things off the bat. The brother has been an active leader in the community. He's put himself in position before to run for city office, the mayor. He was endorsed by Minister Louis Farrakhan back in 2014 when he did so. And I'm not overly familiar, but I've done my studies, and I try to keep my ear to the ground in the community. I just recently seen him speaking at a funeral for a young brother in the Norfolk area that had a lot of respect. And so, I just think that it's very important that, we bring this brother to the conversation, particularly knowing that there's a lot of artists who follow this platform, because I've heard some of this brother's messages. And, I consider this Virginia's #1 podcast for hip hop culture and dialogue. And in being inclusive to that, I think it's important that everything that we talk about on this stage is not based about music. There's a lot of people that feel like, music is the harmony, it is the melody, it does play a major role into our culture, but at the same time, conversation work, bottom line work in our hip hop community is equally, quite frankly, if not more important. If the work ain't being done, then the music is not going to be heard. And quite frankly, the work is what contributes to the music. If you're not doing work, or if you're not putting yourself in spaces where you can be influenced, then what do you really have to write about? And so this brother's done a lot of work, and I'm really interested today to get into that work. Remember, this podcast can be heard everywhere podcasts are, except SoundCloud. And you also, and also, instead of me promoting everybody else's platform, as far as Spotify and Stitcher and YouTube and all the places you can check this out, I encourage you also to go to randywilsonpodcast.com. We got to do more at supporting our own machines and generating eyes and views and wealth to our platforms, instead of constantly, bigging up all the other social media platforms that obviously we get familiar with. So with no further ado, Mr. Muhammad, thank you, sir, for being on the show today. This is episode 65.
Thank you, brother, for having me. I'm well honored to be not only on your podcast, but to make your acquaintance, your conversation. It's luminary, it's visionary in the area of hip hop. You give our scene here in Virginia a balanced view to the world, and for that, we're grateful. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, bro. I really appreciate it, man. And again, I really appreciate you. I also appreciate the brother Doe who reached out to me.
Absolutely.
Doe reached out to me. And not only Doe, man, you may not even know, Kurt, what's Kurt's last name?
Bowens.
Kurt Bowens also reached out to me. He was like, man, you need to speak to this brother. It's been quite a few people, you know what I'm saying? Your work speaks beyond you, because there's been several people who have been in my ear and telling me, like, this is a guy that you need to talk to. And so this is just a beginning, I hope, of rapport building and ultimately a relationship, that one day we can get face to face also and just continue to chop it up, have conversation, but not just conversation that leads to real action, because I am of the community. I don't just podcast. I recognize I am of the community as well. And so I'm always interested in figuring out how we can take this conversation to to something else, because I believe this firmly. Anything's possible with the start of a healthy conversation.
Absolutely.
You know, who knows where this is going to go, but let's get right on into some questions here, man. I got some questions prepared and some questions I like to kind of let it flow a little bit. I think I want to start here just because I found it extremely interesting. You've done some travels with the minister Louis Farrakhan, if I'm correct. I feel like I've seen you in shared spaces with him.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that itself is just like it's such a honor. You know what I'm saying? Like, just, you know, man, when I walked into Timbaland Studio down at Virginia Beach, I felt like I was walking into holy spaces, right? So like
And you were.
yeah, so when I'm talking to somebody who's been in spaces with the minister Louis Farrakhan, who I believe is unlike any other living person in this world right now, and maybe ever. I strongly believe that. Um, I I pinch myself for not investing more time in getting more knowledge and more like, because, and I say that because the man is in his 80s and we've been blessed to have him for so long. And one day he is not going to be here in the physical sense, right? He's one day, like we're, you know, but I think it's one of those things where it's like, he's a jewel to have. And it just makes me feel like I got a lot of work to do, so much more work to do in just taking in the knowledge and information that he has. And so I'm constantly Googling and listening to him. And a lot of people don't know that, but because I'm having this conversation with you, it has to come to the surface. You know, this is extremely an honor to talk to someone who has been in, you know, in his socks. You know what I'm saying? So can you share with me? Can you share with me, you know, the relationship and the experiences that you've had with him? Because to have him endorse you for mayor obviously was major.
Very, very good. Thank you, brother. Um, as I'm sitting here listening to you as a student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I'm extremely touched. I'm touched on his behalf. I'm touched to know his mind and his desire for his people. To hear one who has the span, the reach of yourself, that is not necessarily included in the religious or organizational conversation, to have such a wonderful view and august respect for Minister Farrakhan. He is, in truth, in my opinion, the most wonderful human being that I have ever met. And that's not to take away from my mother, my father, my children, or any other human being. But his heart and the sincerity of his heart is something that you encounter on impact. And so therefore, I have viewed him since a young child in a way that has helped me to see the world, to understand God, self, and my people, and give me a motivational push to not ever give up on the liberation struggle. So, having been blessed to not only travel extensively with Minister Farrakhan, but I served him for several years as his national youth minister and his minister of Norfolk, Virginia. And so I had tremendous opportunity to travel and to be with Minister Farrakhan on too many occasions to number. I remember and recount fondly as I listen to you the day that Minister Farrakhan told me in Baltimore, Maryland, back some years ago. He said, brother, because when you come into his ministry class, generally there are those who've been there so long that he'll appoint individuals to mentor and to guide those who come into his classroom on how to be successful. But on this particular day, amongst some of his family and top helpers, I can recall Minister Farrakhan saying to me, he said, brother, I don't want anybody else to teach you. I want to teach you myself. And so Minister Farrakhan and his way of teaching is so prolific that he pours in, even unbeknownst to you, wisdom that will carry you not only for that day, for many, many to come. His teacher, Mr. Elijah, it is said that he never spoke an idle word. Every word he spoke had meaning for today or tomorrow. And Minister Farrakhan is such a man. I've had the blessed privilege as his national youth representative to be in many, many meetings with him and the luminaries of hip hop. And one meeting I call in very fond memory back in, of so many, in 2005 in Atlanta, where he called some of the best and brightest minds of hip hop together. And we met Killer Mike, Too Short, Ludacris. Oh God, the name's so many to number, executives of every ilk. And he talked to those brothers, particularly about what the future would look like for our people from an economic upheaval perspective. And he began to encourage them to buy gold and land and to invest in those things that would bring return as the dollar of America declines, as the government of America declines. We have to look towards those things that will give us stability and in some instances, sovereignty and eventuality. And in the eventuality, our own free and independent society. So from that perspective, listening to him pour into those brothers, particularly, and then over the course of that time, even back to 2001 in the beginning of Russell Simmons's Hip Hop Summit and other events that were very giving to hip hop from Brother Farrakhan's perspective, even Ice Cube and his development and upbringing. Just being a part of that, I can't tell you, brother, the blessing, the sheer blessing and honor that of my life that it has been to travel and to work with Minister Farrakhan, to stand with him and world leaders, to dine in his home, the home of Mr. Muhammad, with people such as Muhammad Ali and the beautiful, beautiful Queen Winnie Mandela, the wife of Nelson Mandela, and so many other leaders and world luminaries, too many to name amongst our people, but having been blessed to be with people like Comandante El Jefe Fidel Castro Ruiz of Cuba, and being a part of one of the last delegations to meet with Comandante before he transitioned power to his brother Raul, and now what you see as a decline in Cuba. And so having been blessed to travel and study extensively with that wonderful man, I thank you for that honor of recognizing him and his work at his 87th year, going into his 88th year of life. And he is as strong today as he has been in his word. And that is what he always impressed upon me, was the most important part of this journey. It is our word, because that has existence long beyond our years.
Powerful, powerful. You spent many years with him. Where are you at? I mean, you're right now still doing the work, but are you still traveling with him?
No, in full transparency, in 2008, I was relieved from my assignment as his national youth minister and minister due to my own personal domestic life. And when I was relieved of those assignments, I have since kind of just floated about, so to speak, in the background. Because at a young age, brother, I tell you, 14 years old, I got involved in the work of liberation. My first movement was to lead a walkout at my high school here in Norfolk, Virginia, Booker T. Washington High School, the famed Booker T. Washington High School. And I took over the school within a 3-day period. I literally maneuvered and as an individual took over the school and led a school-wide walkout over what I perceived to be injustices. And from that, I was bitten, so to speak. I got bit by the bug. And so, brothers, who were more familiar with Brother Farrakhan at the time. When I was young and 14, they would call me Farrakhan. And so as they called me that, I kind of amalgamated into that mentality. And eventually I realized that my learning was such that it surpassed most that I encountered. So I had to go and find someone who could teach me in a way that I would be able to receive. So I got on a plane, and I, like that person in the scripture that pushed through the crowd when Jesus was teaching in the square, determined to touch the hem of his garment, I traveled and I pressed my way through many, many layers until I could get close enough to touch the hem of that man's garment, because I knew that that would give me that thing that I would need to be made whole. And so I've been blessed to take what Brother Farrakhan has taught me. His student minister, Khallid Abdul Muhammad, who was my mentor and teacher and trainer, what he has taught me, who was the man that taught Ice Cube, Khalid Muhammad. He's the man that taught Tupac. He's the man that taught Public Enemy and so many others. In fact, he's the voice you hear on Public Enemy's Night of the Living Baseheads. Have you forgotten that once we were brought here, we were robbed of our names, robbed of our knowledge. We lost our religion, our culture, our God, and many of us, by the way we act, we even lost our minds. On the 17th of this month, it marked the 20th anniversary of the passing of my beautiful mentor and teacher, Khalid Abdul Muhammad, who I buried with my bare hands in Ferncliff Cemetery, right next to Malcolm X, who died in 1965, as you said, beginning this podcast. He died in 1965, just a few days ago, February the 21st. So walking in that history, brother, is where I have been. And having seen so many go before me, I did not know or think that at that time, that was the environment for me, because ultimately where I was going, the brightness of my star based on my talent was very, very intimidating to me. I was a contemporary, even though I'm younger, with the recently released Kwame Kilpatrick, mayor of Detroit. He, as a student of Minister Farrakhan, we were in the same classroom. And so many nights we would sit at the table and be taught by Minister Farrakhan. And one of the major lessons that he wanted to invoke into us at that time, and his continued message, was about character and our talent preparing us for places that necessarily our character hadn't developed. So as a younger brother, and he as a younger brother, we made mistakes that character, you see, had to be checked. And that check of character really put us in a better position to lead and guide a time like this. This internet age, though I am young, this internet age has taken us by storm so much that mistakes are embedded in the fabric of society forever. There is no reformation available because of the stain of social media. However, when you, such as myself, had an opportunity to learn early before the saturation of this thing, man, it gives you an opportunity to see what's coming and help prepare for those who are coming behind. So while you ask me about my current position, it is in community. It remains in community. I'm a man of the people. Had I taken the trajectory of where I was on the national and international stage, so much deprivation and suffering would have carried on amongst the people that I've been blessed to serve in the time that God has blessed me to serve. Monumental change, things that have been written in the history books, and I'm not boasting and bragging, just as historic as the people I've walked with is my life itself.
Well, I think it's beautiful when you recognize that and then you lend your talent and time to your own community. You know,
That's all I have.
so many people, they use platforms to go and address the masses and they never really focus on home, you know. And so respect to you for
Foregoing millions. I forego millions, brother. I have a gift, just like my teacher, not just like my teacher in comparison, but similar to my teacher, I have a gift of oratory. that takes me places and puts me in front of people, billionaires and millionaires who pull on my mind for advice and guidance as I serve in private business capacity as a consultant. I have billionaires who are clients, billion-dollar corporations, millionaires as individuals, celebrities, businessmen and women, and others. And from that perspective, my gift has made room for me. And if my gift and the expansion of it was my interest, it would make even greater room for me. But my greater desire is service and social systematic change. And the reason being is because I have children who have to live in this world. And if I don't do it today, damn it, they're going to have to do it tomorrow. And my love for them does not want to see them marching and protesting up and down the street because we didn't take care of the business. So I lend myself to that for my children, your children, and all of the little Black children that look like us.
All right, I think that's a great. So I want to piggyback off that. I want to assume, and I may be, I'm going to assume something because I think that whatever reason that you chose to explore politics, we know that the people in power are typically not the politicians. The politicians are the puppets in a lot of circumstances for the people in power because they are the recipients of money and all kinds
influence,
and all kind of things that
gratuities, right?
Go on behind closed doors and under tables, but on across, in front of you and on the table, they're just public lobbyists. But I tend to believe that
Very
when
well
you put yourself in that position, it was for, the real reasons that our community needs to see people who look like you and I addressing issues within the community, not just for people who look like us, but for all people at the end of the day. So I'm just curious, like, what was your initial motivation for doing that? And now, that's behind you, you're still doing the work, but like, how do you feel about politics? What's your take on politics versus the work? If you was in that position, or even though you're not currently holding a political public office, you're still a public figure. What's your take on that?
When I was 16 years old and they put me out of public school, not, for the things that you would think, but I mean, I am and have been who I have been. God made me this way. And when they put me out, my father said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to make these bastards pay." And in my course of study and teaching and training myself, one of the first acquisitions I made in a reparations settlement. I call it a reparations settlement because I would go to Old Dominion University's library and I would get the books that I needed for my library, and I would make it a part of their reparations settlement. And so one of the first books that I extracted from their library was a book of etymology. I became extremely interested in etymology because I understood that words and the power of words are what define reality. And so in studying the word politics at its etymological root, you have two words, poly, which means many, and ticks, which means bloodsuckers. And knowing that the politics of America is a system of many bloodsuckers moving for the purpose of their own self-aggrandizement. I'm not making this up. Go look it up. And so understanding this system and seeing that it determined who got what, when, where, how much, I knew and understood, listening to my father, who always taught me that change was from the inside, that there was an influence necessary in the political sphere. As a young man, I watched Brother Farrakhan move with all of the politicians of every ilk and level. I remember being called into Chicago as a young Muslim to help on the campaign of State Senator Barack Obama, and in Chicago, in Illinois. And so I became thirsty in that process. As I began to build here in Norfolk, Virginia, during my period of time out of the nation with Brother Khallid Muhammad, building the new Black Panther Party, it was the current mayor of Norfolk, Virginia, who came to me and said, Michael, there's a better way of doing it. Because my way of railing against the machine was seen by him and those of the establishment as very radical. And to be honest, it was out of the norm, because ultimately we come in a society in Virginia where people are very mealy-mouthed about anything outside of what is acceptable. And that has been the posture. And not boasting, not bragging, but if you check the record, I have been blessed to be one of those catalysts for change, for breaking the way in which we communicate and conduct ourselves when it comes to the establishment, white people, the political system, and power. And so early in my development, knowing that I wanted to be an orator, needing audience, I would use the city council as my backdrop. And I would go and voice my disgust and discord with various policies and practices early as a teenager when it wasn't popular. And I would say the things to those people that would give them a rise to the point that on the record in Norfolk, Virginia, I'm the only man in the history, 336-year history of Norfolk, Virginia, to which they have adjourned the council meeting while a citizen was speaking, not once, but twice, got up and walked out because I was blazing their ass. And I say that to say, matter of fact, I here have a picture that was in the Virginian Pilot newspaper. This picture of me leaving their chamber where I smoked them people and gave them heartburn and shut down their system, and began to do it so repetitiously that it became common practice and of interest to others. So along the process, shortly after I was on my respite of time coming out of my laborious work in the nation, really getting acclimated back to the ground, a young brother who I mentored and loved like a son, a brother, a friend from a very young age, who was a barber, was killed by the police. And in the midst of his being murdered by the police and working to rise that language above the fray, this was before my as Michael Brown kicked off that "Don't Shoot." And so from perspective, a year earlier when Omar Johnson was killed in Norfolk, Virginia, Joshua Amal, I was so impacted and affected that I went into a deep, deep, deep depression. And while I was in that depression, I prayed and I talked to God. And I asked him what to do. And he told me to walk. And so I organized hundreds of people, and I took them from that young man's home, and I took them to the white business district where he was killed under the shouts of Black power and no justice, no peace, not this Millie Mouth stuff they were doing. And we went to the bank where that brother was killed and surrounded that bank, shut it down, stopped them from doing business. And really a movement was started, a "Don't Shoot" movement. And from there, a few months later, as the pressure was on for the prosecutor to release the findings of the investigation, there was video surveillance from the bank and the police and others that they wouldn't release. So as I had prayed and asked God, and he told me to walk, I continued to pray. And in this particular, the instruction changed. He didn't say walk, he said run. And I talked to my partners and brothers at Creative Nation, Doe and WAPO, and I was really perplexed on what to do, but I was determined to do something. And so then it became very clear, crystal clear to me what God was saying. Having been a political consultant, even a consultant for the very mayor to which I challenged, white supremacist mentality mayor that I challenged, Paul Frame, when the Spirit said run, it crystallized. I said, I know what I'll do. I'll run for the seat of power and use that platform to push every issue that I have on my agenda. With the release of the video, we got the release of the video. With various human infrastructure development issues, we got it done. Not with me as mayor, because honestly, I never wanted to win. I never wanted to win. But what I did want was to put those issues on the platform. And we were able to successfully do that. Another issue that we put on the platform during that time, go and check the record, it's there, was the issue of decriminalization of marijuana in the state of Virginia. Everybody, with the exception of my partners at Creative Nation and one or two others, fought me on that idea in 2014. Various members that are now elected members of Norfolk's Council, because most don't know that the legalization that started with decriminalization in Virginia comes out of Norfolk, Virginia, as a result of its councilmatic body pushing a legislative agenda through the legislators for decriminalization. It started in 16. Now, with that being said, I debated and argued the process by which to decriminalize. 2 years later, they argued with me, oh, this can't be done. It's not a city issue. It's not. They argued on the record. It's there, video, newspaper, you can see it. So the reporter had to come back and write from the Richmond Times-Dispatch, Patrick Wilson, when decriminalization became a conversation, that this conversation started with Michael Muhammad, an activist in Norfolk, Virginia in 2014. And the reason being is because we laid and wrote the process by which the decriminalization would take place. 2 years later, we, Creative Nation, Doe, WAP, myself, others, worked to bring Birth of a Nation, the movie, premiere to Norfolk because Nate Parker's origin is Norfolk. We fought with Fox Searchlight and others in a very intense battle to make sure that that movie came to light. And whether people know it or not, the work that Creative Nation did to make sure that that movie made it to the movie screen is historic, and one day will be told in a documentary and will make eyes shudder. I will tell you here that we dealt with Nate Parker on the phone lamenting about the threats to his life, his family, and others with the release of that movie. And there was a very strategic method that WAPO from Creative Nation and myself developed to force Fox to send that movie to Virginia. And the way we did it was utilizing the platform of decriminalization of marijuana. And we got Norfolk council persons to put on the agenda, on the record, support for the Birth of a Nation film and decriminalization of marijuana. And that propelled both of those things to the public spotlight. And I'm only saying that because the historical context of the work that we have done quietly in Virginia, the Ashanti-Alert, an alert designed to go and look for missing adults from 18 to 64 years old. That is my brainchild. Through many, many years of working to procure safety and return of children and missing persons to their family, realizing that gap in that system, when that family reached out to me, I began to put a cast of support together from their attorney, Don Scott, who's now state legislator, to the woman who worked as their publicist, Miss Kimberly Winbish, and others. And I organized the brain thrust of this concept, and we worked it through the House, the United States Congress, the United States Senate, and to the desk of the president at 6 p.m. on December 31st, 2018, while the government was in a shutdown. So we built and forwarded legislation. Virginia just ended the atrocious system, or I should say, reformed the atrocious system of probation and parole. And I'm happy to have been one of the brain trusts in the think tank of that developmental process.
Are you
So
familiar
we're
with Paul
working.
Taylor?
Paul Taylor, that name is familiar.
I wanted to mention that name because he's from I think he's from Newport News, and the brother was locked up for 25 years, I believe, for I think
While you're thinking about that, Trevion Blunt, who was sentenced to 6 life sentences plus 100 plus years, who first got a 40-year commutation to 40 years and then was recently released from prison. I was the first vocal voice to stand behind his advocate, Miss Monique, Sister Monique, and press that case into the public. So therefore, we got to work. Since 2000, while you're thinking of Brother Paul Taylor, I have no educational background from this world. I don't even have a GED, a good enough degree, you know? But not only have we written legislation and forwarded other things, but since 2000, I've served as a non-attorney advocate and spokesperson for families and have worked diligently, not just being present or a voice, but actively behind the scenes in negotiations, in mediation, in settlement conferences. I've worked to secure over $33.5 million for Black families in wrongful death and personal injury, never taken a dime from a family.
$35 million.
33.5. And that's on the record. That's on the record. Matter of fact, I'm actually a wizard at it, to the point where lawyers and as a consultant to wave me into the process so that I can be a part of the confidentiality and make things happen. Secured some of the largest, I have secured the largest settlements on record in Hampton Roads for police involved shootings that ended in death.
That's amazing. Without an institutionalized education degree.
And never wanted it. My partner Doe from is on me, my daughter, others. Read law, go get a law degree, do this. To hell with them. Because ultimately, only what you do for Christ will last. They can't take credit for me, brother. They showed me the door of education, not for entrance, for exit. And so because they didn't want me, I don't want them. I'll take God's education and whoop their ass with it.
Yo, it's important. I had to drop the name Paul Taylor, and if you don't know him, you don't know Paul.
I've just written it down. That name. Tell me his story, and let me see if it jogs a memory.
Paul Taylor was incarcerated for 25 years. I think he was incarcerated for charges that he would acknowledge guilt for. Okay. However, while incarcerated, and he's a former guest on my show, episode 20-something, 22 or something like that. You can check him out on my YouTube. It's in the early 20s. You can go back. Amazing story. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because you guys are in the same area doing some of the same work. When he was incarcerated, he created a program for reentry. Okay. That got Governor McDonald his attention, and has played a pretty impactful role. Still a work in progress, obviously, but it's played a real pivotal role in regard to how folks are being re-entered back into society. And so I'm sharing his name with you because he's from Newport News, you in Norfolk, and together,
well, brother,
y'all powerful. Y'all, it just means that much more power.
Yeah, no, I'm always interested in my people because ultimately, see, time produces agenda. Time dictates agenda. And the time is that we go free. And so because the time is that we go free, liberators are coming from the right, from the left, from before, from behind, from beneath and above. And so therefore, as we meet in the field of labor as liberators, there comes a time where there's individualistic work, but there's also a collective work. And so I'm always interested in meeting the wisdom
Sure.
and luminaries amongst our people.
I think as a podcast, I serve as a vessel a lot of times because I have a lot of conversations with a lot of folks respectfully and in confidence outside of what's in public. And so as I get this information, if sometimes it's like, I feel like it's the universe, it's God telling me, boom, boom, that's a connection. Just as Chelsea Hicks Wise, and Doe and I've already spoke about her, that's a definite person that, you know, I think it's just another connection toward making the work that you guys are already doing that much more powerful. I mean, it's powerful in itself, but when you put 3, 4, or 5, we in numbers, then we really moving things.
There's an African proverb that says, "In unity, spiders can tie up a line," and that's where we are. That's where we are as a people. We're full. We're Fannie Lou Hamer tired. You know, sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so, because we've arrived at that point, they've killed many of our luminaries, our leaders, our visionaries, and we have constantly come to the point of conflict, one amongst the other. But the reality of the matter is that God and the angels, call it what you want, have organized the affairs of man to the point where he doesn't even need our permission to liberate us. See, before he waited on us. But look at how America is now clashing with herself. The Bible says if Satan cast out Satan, how can their kingdom stand? So you, within the structure of America, remember, America means, or the origination of the meaning America is white male landowner of native descent to this land. And so white men and white women now clashing, Democrat, Republican, 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 and this infight and infusion of hate and vitriol and the words civil war. Keep in mind, it was the Civil War that led to the proclamation. Because the Civil War led to the proclamation, we are right back at that time once again. It is a fact and a matter of a fact that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the great luminary, visionary, and leader, Dr. King, had a plan in 1963 to reintroduce the idea of the Emancipation Proclamation, but this time it was to ratify into the Constitution civil rights. Because whether you know it or not, or your listeners know it or not, we are not included in the Constitution as citizens, but we are reviewed in the United States Congress every so often to have our civil rights respected and restored. So the 3/5 compromise that was initially in the Constitution that excluded even Dred Scott, who had gone to the free North, from being a free man and relegated him back to slavery, thus setting the pace and the tone for what transpired in various aspects of post-Nat Turner and Harper's Ferry, John Brown, and others that led to the civil set off the Emancipation Proclamation. Well, Dr. King could not convince John Fitzgerald Kennedy in 1963 to sign, or 1962 to sign on January 1st, 1963, a second Emancipation Proclamation. Shortly after, or less than a year later, Kennedy was killed. The idea died. We had a Black president who never thought to ratify with his signature into the Constitution Black people and our civil rights. So we stand here today as non-citizens, burdened with all of the responsibility of citizenship and watching those who relegate them and are constitutionally determined to be citizens infighting against each other. Well, if they're infighting and America is at an implosion governmentally and economically, that only means that there has to be an uprising of another idea, another concept. So when we see Kanye West run for president, I don't think we should make so much mockery, because Michael J. Muhammad ran for mayor in Norfolk, Virginia in 2014, and they told me that the first Black mayor had not been born yet. But it's a 4-year process. From 2014, the next race was supposed to be 18, but through the machinations of the wicked and their manipulation of the system for their purposes, They set it from a 2014 to a 2016 race, 2 years for that particular term. And by doing so, when the first black mayor had not even been born yet, when I, as the first black man, ran for mayor in the city of Norfolk, 2 years later, we produced the first black mayor. Why? Because we planted an idea whose time had come and whose reality was more relevant to the landscape than what had gone before. So I say, when you have a Kanye West run for president, knowing full well that he could not and would not win and was not even in a qualified position based on the number of states and ballot appearances that he would need, what he did was planted an idea so that now from hip hop, the potential for a real candidate to emerge and represent our interests and the world, so that we don't have people like Ice Cube and 50 Cent and Sean Diddy Combs and others, and Lil Wayne and others falling all over themselves when it comes to politicians. We can force the landscape, force the issue, and force, just like they have presidential debates through their commission at universities and all of these places of high regard, we force them to come to the hip hop community and have a real presidential debate talking about our issues and answering our questions. Because the day of separation, whether we stay in this systematic way of doing things or establish another, separation is here and it is a reality.
That's dope, man. I'm posting that. I'm posting that. That's a very postable piece right there, man. I feel like people need to hear that, man. It made me think, man, I'm over here taking notes, man. I didn't plan to have to, you got me adding questions. This,
bro.
we're never going to get.
I know we're killing the time, and I'm
available. I got time if you got time, because I got a lot of things I want to get off here. I do have a 10:30 meeting, so I know that you got to.
I got to get on this road. Yeah, I got to get on the road to the airport. What time are we at now?
9:07.
Let's kill a few more minutes. I'm vibing.
I got a few. I got some questions I really want to get off to you for time.
Absolutely.
Let me just get these off.
Yes, sir.
Man, and I guess, respectfully give concise answers so I can get these questions off, because these questions, I've already added 10 questions just because of the things that you're saying. So we may have to do a part 2. But I want to recognize first that I respect and now appreciate understanding why you chose to run for office. You used the platform for your own agenda, and it wasn't so much about winning, but in some ways you did win. You did win in regards
because everybody's running and winning now.
Yeah.
I broke the mold. Obama did for the generations of people who went before this particular, I don't say generation, but what Obama did in 2012 didn't have a lasting effect to 14 and others, because that was an anomaly. That was what happened and it was over. And 8, 12 is over. But when you find young people who are engaged in various aspects of community, when you have a chance, go to YouTube and pull up my One Norfolk video when I ran for mayor and brought together hip hop artists from every corner of the city, never planning to win mayor. I wanted to infuse the idea of politics into their minds and their concepts and get them thirsty and thinking about something outside of what they had heretofore thought about. And we produced a tremendous work. But in that work, we also produced the idea of engagement, So when I said to the young people, to the brothers, I said, I always had a vision of doing a stop the self-destruction, we all in the same gang style a song. So when I ran for mayor, I took that opportunity and did it and told the brothers, let's call this young people together to One Norfolk, stop the killing. I said, I want you to take the message of stop the violence and put it in a song and tell them it's from me. And they put this awesome work together that when you hear it, you'll be pleased. And I'm saying that to say the inspiration based on the information that we shared during that time elevated the energy of the people. So if you hear in that endorsement clip of Minister Farrakhan of myself in 2014, you'll hear him say, go ahead, brother, do it. Because at first he told me it was not for me. No, you're not qualified, brother. It's not for you. And as I began to discourse with my teacher, because I said to him, I said, brother minister, I'm in this thing, but if you say no, I'm out today, not tomorrow, right now. And so he thought on it and we conversed, and you'll hear pick up on the interview, the piece that we put on the internet, you'll hear him say, I would imagine that the young people would be electrified. And then he says, damn, go do it, brother. Do what God has put on your heart. And the reason that I was inspired and empowered by that release, because I knew that as I was fighting the battle for the heart and mind of the people, changing that piece that was mayor, breaking that man's leg, challenging him. He spent $500,000, I spent 20,000. But I put a challenge on him that he wouldn't debate me. He told them, he said, there's no way I would debate Muhammad. There's no way I could win. And this is a University of Richmond trained lawyer, undergrad from the University of Virginia, with training in other areas, but he would debate me, DMI also. And so 2 years later, we helped to negotiate the transition with that same man to the man that's there today. And if you go and look at the visibility of his campaign, you'll see in the visibility of that man's campaign, my campaign from 2 years earlier, damn near looked like the same campaign. And it's really not a coincidence that he and I look alike.
Mm. So you did what the minister said, you electrified the city. And
electrified.
My question to you is, do you feel, with all the knowledge and power that you have, power and knowledge in relationships and community and belief, does the city fear you? And when I say city, I'm talking about
the governor fears me. Yeah. And I'm not being arrogant. Listen to me. Mm-hmm. The governor that you have right now in Virginia, I helped make him. When he came to run for his first elected office, he was Dr. Ralph Northam. He wanted to run. And he came and met with me and said, Michael, I want to run for elected politics. This is my first time. And I don't know people. I don't know the Black community. He hired me. And because of his platform and because of and what he wanted to achieve, and the Republican that was there, who was notorious for appointing racist judges, Nick Ress at that time, I took on Ralph Northam as a consultant. And we were victorious that time and the next. And then the third time he ran for and became lieutenant governor, then governor. And I say that to say fear is a healthy thing. The Bible says the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. And the reason that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom is because you don't know all into the mind of God. So to have a revelatory or introspection into his mind, gives you trepidation, because you have to approach the throne of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding with trepidation and with ignorance. That's just the fact. You're going toward knowledge. I say that to say this. These people don't know what the hell I might say or what the hell I might do. And they know that for 30 years now, they have not been able to do anything with me, and they have tried. They have tried.
What's your position on defunding the police?
Take it all from them. Listen, I believe in law enforcement. I believe that there's a necessity for the policing of our community. But I believe that we have produced amongst ourselves that which is necessary to police our community. And that was another part of that conversation with Minister Farrakhan and the rappers in Atlanta. Ludacris said, Minister Farrakhan, this is Ludacris, very brilliant little brother, little in stature, older than me, but brilliant. He said, Minister Farrakhan, we're with you. We're with the Black empowerment. He said, but this is a Jewish controlled industry. This is white controlled. What do we do when we move out in distribution and ownership and they come against us, they kill us? He said, this thing is dangerous. And the minister said, very good question, brother. He said, you see all of those young men and women in the streets that they call gangbangers? He said, yeah, they're not gangbangers. They are the defenders and protectors of our community. They just don't know. He said, it is our job and your job because your music, he told them, one of your songs is worth 10,000 of my lectures. He said, it is our job and your job to go after them and change the way and the perception of them so that we can move. That's why you saw Minister Farrakhan at Nipsey Hussle's funeral so full that he said Nipsey Russell when he was meaning Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Russell, who was his contemporary and friend and activist actor, gave way to Nipsey Hussle. But when you heard the fullness of Brother Farrakhan, it was because he literally saw the red and the blue coming together. So in a clip that I posted to my Instagram, and it's there on social media, from me speaking in 2005 at the 10th anniversary of the Million Man March, I said from that dais, from that stage, that august place, that place they just attacked, the Capitol, I said these words. I said to my blood brothers and my Crip brothers and sisters, we are one family. And I want you to know the real enemy don't wear red nor necessarily blue. You know, the police wear blue. I said, but white, even when he's butt naked. Some say, oh, that's racist. No, but white supremacy is the enemy of all that we stand for. And white supremacy is the mind of the white man, and it is trickled down into the other people of the earth to include the Black man and the Black woman. So we have to break Black inferiority and white supremacy. And that don't mean we go into Black supremacy, because guess what? Black is naturally supreme. Black is color, culture, consciousness, and a corresponding cosmic connection to the creator. So therefore, we don't need to make what is supreme, supreme. The humility of our supremacy will move and give justice to everyone. So when it comes to defunding the police, I say take it all from them and reinvest it in our communities. In my song, One Norfolk, when I ran for mayor, one of the young brothers who, one of the rappers, Flame Bond, he said, we in the business of taking the money out of the prison and invest it in the school system. See, when you have reinvestment ideas, look at, I think it was San Francisco just took $100+ million out of the budget for police and reinvested it into the Black community. And so when you say defund the police, that don't mean take away security. It means defund the system of white supremacy that has been used since the plantation to oversee a people who are struggling for balance and criminalizing them for the purpose of economic upheaval. That's what defunding the police means to me. Take it all from them. Mm-hmm. Don't just defund the police. Take the uniform, take the gun, take that militarized weaponry that they use, and take those damn enemies of ours that go into the military, go into foreign countries, establish a hate for what they call enemy combatants, get trained in Israel with some of the worst human training, like what they did to George Floyd. That training comes out of Israel. Stop all of that. Stop all of that and begin to invest in reaffirming within the context of our own community the strength of ownership, which automatically gives you the premise and the right for protection. What you got a gun for? You ain't guarding the door. See, MC Lyte set the pace many, many years ago. And when you understand what she said, you're not guarding the door of your home to protect your family. And when I say your home, I'm not talking about in the projects or some rental. I'm talking about that which you work by the sweat of your brow to produce and secure. And then you have something to protect your family, your property, that which you have gone into business for. Mr. Elijah Muhammad said there's 3 sciences that they would never teach us coming off of the plantation: the science of mating, the science of war, and the science of business. And they're really all one science, because when you mate, it's business. If your mate is not in the same process of mind you're in, then it won't be successful and it won't produce. So mating is business. Mating is war, because when you mate, you protect your mate. So therefore, you have to have that militarized structure. So mating, war, and business are one and the same, and you have to transfer that into the business sector. So when we begin to establish community, business, and territory, yes, we should have weaponry. Yes, we should have all that is necessary to give security to that which we own, that which we respect, that which deserves our protection. So defund the police. That's our money. Why should I pay you to mistreat me, to disrespect me, to have white supremacist connections and groups that you're a part of in the background, and then come to work for an 8 to 12-hour shift planning your nigger hunt? Because that's what they're all doing. This is their opportunity. Once I get a drop on that nigga, I got him. So in the conclusion of the point on defunding the police, brother, in truth, the process by which this policing system was set up, and it has trickled all over the world, was through a process of overseeing the slaves on the plantation. And it didn't start in 1619. It started in 1555 when they came and convinced us we would earn more in this country for our labor than we were earning in our own. But when the trader disappeared and there was no one to speak our language, we were amongst a people who were uncivilized, and they took and made us enemies to ourselves over a 64-year period and trained hate into us, and then took us back to Africa, where we were used as catchers and captors of our own people. So that process and system of policing that was established on the plantation, the paddy rollers and others, that needs to be abolished. Just like Kanye West said, the 14th Amendment, the abolishment of slavery, he said there needs to be an Kanye West was right. Kanye West was right. And he's one of the most prolific and brilliant minds that our people have ever produced. And we're sending that man into a mental psychosis by treating him as if he's crazy when he's really a goddamn genius. Produced by Dr. Donda West, another genius who was a musical visionary and researcher that understood what it took to transition the mind of young Black men from that to this. And so when we bring that system of abolishment of this police into place, we don't need to talk about defunding, we need a restructuring.
Yeah. You dropped a name earlier, and I mentioned it too, and I want to make sure that people know. Talk a little bit about Creative Nation and the work that Creative Nation does.
Creative Nation, man, that's a great question. Creative Nation is a group of creatives, Black young men at the university level and in the nightlife throughout Virginia, and they developed a corporate body by which they are now the premier, unequivocally the premier urban marketing and advertisement agency in Southeast Virginia, and they are amongst the largest in the DMV. And so those young brothers who have innovated and inspired now 4 and 5 levels of college graduates in the area of business and entrepreneurship, following some of the platform of Sean Diddy Combs and others, coming out of that promotion and club industry into ownership and now real estate and other things. So they're just a brilliant group of brothers who I'm blessed to have become a part of and work closely with and mentor and guide as an advisor. And it's just a wonderful experience to see brilliance personified in the form of Black men and women. And that's Creative Nation.
Respect to the organization. I know that we coming under like about 10 minutes here. I want to ask a few questions just to help people kind of get familiar with a side of you that they may not know. You know, some different questions here. On the music scene of Virginia, is there any folks that stand out particularly to you that you be paying attention to?
Oh my God, man! Across the span, it's so many to name, and I don't like to do the geographical thing and start naming local artists and that. But let me say this: there's so many to name. I'll say that when Pharrell said there was something in the water, first of all, not being disparaging against For Real, who I love. He's a part of us. But that did not originate with For Real.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
And what I mean by that is, if you go back to the Breakfast Club interview with Smokey Robinson, the one and only interview Smokey Robinson has done, 2 weeks later, after that interview, For Real was on the Breakfast Club. When Smokey Robinson interviewed, he talked about growing up in Detroit. And his neighbor on the corner was Diana Ross. His neighbor around the corner was Aretha Franklin, and so on and so on. There were so many luminaries. And Angela Yee made the comment about there being something in the water. Charlemagne followed up several times. He said, man, there's got to be something in the water there. And so the brilliance of Mr. Smokey Robinson was that he said these words. He said, wherever you find a geographical concentration of Black people like that, there's something in the water there.
Yeah.
You see? And so that was that conversation. 2 weeks later, For Real comes. They begin to discuss Virginia. They say Cam Chancellor. They talk about Allen Iverson. They talk about Michael Vick himself. And then the conversation is said then, man, there's something in the water there. And For Real said, yeah, there's something in the water. So later, he brings that concept where he partners with a Jewish conglomerate of people and bring them in my opinion, whether it was his intention or not, I think it's there to usurp and suck the blood of the talent pool of Virginia and leave us with nothing, because they realize there's something in the water. So a fisherman, when he casts his net, knowing that there's something in the water, has the objective of extracting for his own benefit that which is within the water. What benefit comes to the fish? See? So when it comes to the Virginia scene, we are the first. We're the first off the boat. We're the first to give way to this span of liberating vibration that has now transitioned into later years, what is known as hip hop, but coming out of Virginia. The Bible says the first will be the last and the last will be the first. So many have come behind us and appear first, but having been the first, we're the last ones. And let me tell you something, you know it like I know it, the world is looking at Virginia like a giant mammary gland, like a breast that they could suck from our talent and have been. So when I decided to get back in the pool, so to speak, coming before I ran for mayor and began to push and inspire young people, I told my brother from Creative Nation, WAPO, to go and get somebody that I could have easily gone and got, but it was a systematic process. I told him to go and get Young Money Yon for me. Young Money Yon hadn't made an utterance into a microphone other than for pills and water. And we sat, and you can go there on YouTube and you'll see he and I in my conversation and my We Got Work to Do podcast, where the light comes on in his mind. And shortly thereafter, under the direction of Creative Nation, he's producing his first work. So I get a call from him one day and he said, what are you doing? I said, I ain't doing nothing. He said, come go to the studio with me. And within an hour, we produced the song on his first work, on his first mixtape, Street Gospel, the first Street Gospel. We did the song Love Triangle, he and I. So I'm the voice you'll hear on Love Triangle. It's in the nature of a man to protect, to respect the woman of his choice. That's my voice. And so I have watched so many of these young people and taken example behind my mentor, Khallid Muhammad, and my teacher, Minister Farrakhan. I have partnered with so many of these young brothers and sisters to voice on their tracks, to speak, to give wisdom, because I see them as a vehicle. And so they're like traveling in a Rolls Royce, so to speak, you know? And I'm getting there not only fast and luxurious, but everybody's watching and listening as we go by. not even paying attention to the driver. All they care about is the vehicle.
Yeah.
And so that's the way that I see the Virginia scene. There are many names on the scene, brother. And I don't want to play the dozens because I get in trouble like that.
Yeah.
You didn't say, but the names and the voices on the landscape today exceed anything we've had before. They talk about mumble rap. They talk about, these brothers, these young people who don't respect nothing before. Well, let me tell you something. The prophet wish they could live in today and what's going on. I am so blessed to live today and be the age that I am and still be deeply in love with young boy, deeply in love with little baby, deeply in love with so many of them, because the gift, man, I'm talking about what we hear coming out of this generation that the ignorant call mumble. Man, these boys, all they need is somebody to turn the lights on. Remember, they're recording all this in the dark. They working the switchboard in the dark, everything, the microphone, all this they're doing it blind. Turn the lights on in the hearts and the minds of these young brothers, and you'll get what you heard coming out of little baby this summer. See?
In a pandemic.
Because ultimately, that is in a pandemic, man. Do you know Black people saved the economy of the music and recording industry?
Yeah.
We say during the pandemic, we proved that innovation and invention is ours. And the longer we move in that vein, brother, listen, come on, man. I'm telling you, I'm so happy to be in this time with this musical content, with this cultural content, with this spiritual content. There's no time to be born. There's no greater generation to be amongst. You look at these young people the way you look at them. I look at them. And I remember reading in the scriptures of the Bible that Jesus said, suffer the little children to come unto me and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. And when you suffer with these young people, you suffer their disrespect, you suffer the process of their growth, you suffer every ill and infraction that goes along with bringing them. You suffer the black violence, the fratricide, the homicides, the drug dealing, the break-ins. You see that because on the other side of that is a people that once they're touched by the master, our liberation is guaranteed. Guaranteed. Tupac was a sign. Biggie was a sign of what was to come. So we say, oh, the greatest of all time. No, they're only great because you don't have a protracted to judge them by. Dr. King is great because you don't have a protracted struggle to judge them by. If you give Negroes 30 days, find something to be against you for. But when it's over and the period is put there, then they'll judge based off of. So now they're the greatest, but the reality, as great as they were, what they really were was signs of what was coming. Because what we hear spitting today, brother, good God, from Zion, from Virginia, from DC, from New York, from Houston, from Memphis, man, I'm talking about, brother, this is the day that the Lord has made.
Yeah, just
you hear
like
this music coming out today?
Yeah, they the sign just like you was the sign in your mayoral race for, now I believe it's Kenneth Alexander, the mayor of Norfolk. If I'm
he's the mayor. Yeah, and a sign for so many more. The sign, I say that thrive on fear. That's it. Fear is bullshit. Fear is the absence of knowledge, because though fear, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God, you don't continue that way. When you grow in reverence and respect, fear becomes unnecessary because you won't do those offensive things that invoke. I ain't looking for fear, but the fear that they have is because no matter what they do, this voice is able to penetrate the ears and the hearts and the minds of our people. And now, only 43 years old, I'm on my third generation. I'm teaching people's grandchildren that I taught their grandparents.
Brother, man, we're going to have to do a part 2 because I know you got to go.
I appreciate this opportunity, brother. I appreciate the free-flowing energy and spirit of your conversation. I appreciate you. Without being too informative, I understand that you've had some issues with your health.
Yeah.
And let me say this. We need you. As a media personality, there's nothing that is done or recorded that will be properly credited without media. And so the media personalities, whether it's pictorial, whether it's radio, television, now podcasts and others, these instruments will be the greatest tools we'll have as civil liberties, First Amendment, constitutional rights, and that was all over the world. This type of underground communications that they had in Vietnam, that they had in Europe and other places during war to communicate, you will become more and more and more important and relevant, and you will need our security and our protection. Be careful who you eat with, what you eat, who you trust to prepare your food, because the value and quality of your delivery over the hip hop community puts you in a position of great, great, great power. And so for that, we honor you, we thank you, and we really appreciate the sacrifice that it takes to push to these microphones on a consistent basis with an organized format, making yourself professional. Furthermore, your guests, the information and the content that you bring, man, it's amazing. And so I'm honored to come behind so many of those who you have hosted from. I saw the other day our brother who is the president of the university. And then our brother who is a young man, a very young man, LeVar Stoney, who's the mayor there in Richmond. I mean, you don't just cross one genre of the culture. You are tapping into the culture. And so for that, brother, Randy Wilson, we really, really appreciate you.
Brother, man, I tell you what, that's probably one of the nicest things anyone said to me, man.
And sincere. And sincere,
Appreciate it, man.
We don't blow smoke.
Yeah, obviously, your words are powerful, man. I appreciate that, man. My response, my emotional response to that was what I sensed with your response to the Minister Louis Farrakhan when he told you to go electrify him, man. So thank you very much. That means a lot to me. And
thank you, brother.
The work you are doing means a lot to me. It does, man. We gotta do more. And so I'm excited for where this relationship is gonna go. Next time we're gonna be in face to face. I actually am supposed to be in Norfolk in the next few weeks. So
let's make it happen. Let's grab a bite to eat and let's make it happen.
For sure. And if you ever in the Richmond area, man, just hit me up. You got my number. I'm gonna lock you in. I got you on the text. I'm gonna lock you in. We're gonna continue to connect. I appreciate all of those who have tuned into this episode of the Randy Wilson podcast. Man, I mean, for real, y'all don't even understand. Like, I got so many more questions that I got for this brother, but hey, there's gonna be more. I started writing questions down throughout the conversation, and that's how you know that it's real substance there, because the more you said, the more it kind of intrigued me to think further. And we didn't touch on it, but in a future conversation, I'm really interested on conversation with you within politics, within parties, just in regard to what your take is on the position of Black people in regard to what we should we have our own party. I'm really interested in kind of going further there. Similar to how, you know.
And we'll talk about that. But let's just say this, whether it's the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, we ain't invited to the party.
Yeah, agreed.
And the foolishness of us, when we get there, we realize it ain't even that type of party. Yeah. And so therefore, we don't need a party. We frolicked and played enough. Let's get away from the whole conversation of a party. We need a force. We need a movement. We need an institutional idea that revolutionizes this landscape and puts the economic position in place, i.e. reparations, so that we can begin to establish that which will be good for us and the entirety of the world. Look at how we carried the world through the pandemic. Look at how the entire world comes to America and focuses on the Black community. We're the wealth center of the world. Take it or let it alone. And so from that perspective, we have to gather ourselves, collect our thoughts, our ideas, put an evaluation to our position, and move accordingly. And so therefore, we don't need a party, we need a force. See, remember Neo said, I'm a movement by myself, but I'm a force when we're together. Remember I talked about relationship? I said mating, war, and business. You have to relate those scientifically and systematically to everything. So when you think in the way of politics, it's like mating. You have to be with someone who you can procreate an idea with. And that makes you a collective. And so being a force is what we need.
Yeah, I would think it'd be great for us to have that conversation. And I would also suggest maybe we, in collaboration with the Creative Nation, because of their ability to reach masses. I think that would be the platform. Maybe we can do it live on Instagram or something, but I think that'd be the platform.
And we can broadcast from origami, from the club. So let's do it.
Let's do that. All right, brother. I appreciate you, man. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, my brother.
I appreciate
you. And listen, take care of yourself, brother.
I am, brother. I'm drinking water. God. I know I'm behind the bar, but I'm drinking water right now. And we're going to make some things happen. That's for sure, man. Awesome. I appreciate also, let me just say this, man. Norfolk, man, I get more love and respect from Norfolk probably than any part of Virginia. I mean, and I live in Richmond. I'm from North Carolina originally, right? But I got to say, people see me on the Clubhouse. I'm always in these Norfolk rooms. People are starting to think I'm from Norfolk. I ain't from Norfolk, you know. But it's crazy though. So Norfolk gives me a lot of love, and I have to, because I know Norfolk will be paying attention to this interview. So I want to salute Norfolk. Thank you guys for welcoming, my show and giving it so much support and love. Be safe on your flight, sir. Be safe in your travels, and happy birthday,
my brother. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Peace, bro.
Peace.